Thank you, Advancement Courses, for sponsoring today's show. Stay tuned for how to save 20% on online professional development. Today is an extended episode. I'm talking about teaching and why I love it. All week we've been celebrating Valentine's Week about loving teaching. And I have some stories to tell you and some reasons I love teaching. It is a little bit longer. It's going to be over 20 minutes. I think it's the first 20-minute episode we've had in the 10-Minute Teacher. But, I think it's some stuff I need to say to you. I care about you, teacher. I love you. And I hope you learn to love it. So this is episode 439, Teaching Why I Love It.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Today, on February 13th, I am actually home. I'm going to the funeral of the husband of a dear teacher friend, and I'm just really thinking about it. Now, I have a lot of friends who I think have, quote, it, and there's just sort of this it thing about teachers. And to me, it stands for I teach. No matter what, I teach. I had somebody who tweeted me the other day that anybody could be a teacher. It's all about finding the right students. And I guess there could be some truth to that. My principal the other day said to me that you should be able to teach everybody who comes in your classroom, but you have certain students who are drawn to you, and that is your circle of powerful influence. And you should really invest in those students and respond to those students because you have the opportunity to change their life. And for that, I totally do agree. But I also think that sometimes we don't choose those students. Those students just happen because we're there. First story I'm going to tell you is a story that I was really disappointed in myself. Now, one thing I found about great teachers is very often when we have problems in our classroom, we don't blame our students. We blame ourselves. And I know I do. The hardest day of the school year for me is the last day of school because there's just all this stuff that I haven't taught yet. And I just feel like, oh my goodness, I'm a failure, and things just come crashing in. And I remember several years ago, I had a student, Rebecca, who emailed me on the last day of school. She literally went home and she emailed me and she said, you help me understand that the beauty of my faults is that it accentuates my talents. And she's now in art school and she's fantastic and she's doing amazing things. But she had learned that from me in 8th grade keyboarding class. And, so much of what we teach is more than our subject. So I had a student one time who was a senior, and I had taught her in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. And, applications is part of what I teach, not all of it, but part of what I teach. So this particular student had been through my whole applications course and had also built apps and done presentations for the school and all kinds of things. Well, she gets into senior English and the teacher asks her to make smart art in PowerPoint. And she turns to the teacher and she says, I don't know PowerPoint. Miss Vicki never taught it to me. And the teacher was just flabbergasted, but the student insisted I had never taught it. And the other students are kind of raising their eyebrows. And, you've all heard it, teachers. Oh, so-and-so never taught me. And you got two choices there. I hope you give the benefit of the doubt to the teacher as well as to the student, because honestly, we'll never really know the answer. But the teacher came to me and said, so-and-so says she doesn't know PowerPoint. I'm like, what? Well, the student went home and told her mom that she didn't know PowerPoint and she couldn't do the activity. And then she actually went and told the principal that I had never taught her PowerPoint and she couldn't do the activity. So I prayed over it because I knew I had taught her. I was frustrated. I was upset. But then, like I think most good teachers do, I blamed myself and I'm like, I must not have done this or that. So anyway, she had annual staff and that was my 4th period planning block. So I talked to her and I brought her in my room and I said, okay, I've gotten you excused from annual staff for a couple days and I know you have this assignment due. And I was told you don't know PowerPoint. And she looked right at me and said, nope, you never taught me. I'm like, okay, so you don't remember such and such an activity? No, ma'am, I never did it. And you don't remember presenting for the school and creating your slides? Nope. Don't remember it, never did it. Just insisted she'd never been taught. I said, okay, so let's just say that you've never been taught PowerPoint. I have terribly failed you. I am so sorry. So for the next 4 to 5 days, I've gotten permission for you to come out of annual staff and I'm going to give up my planning period and I'm going to teach you PowerPoint. Oh my goodness, you should have seen the look on her face. I could tell she's not very happy about it. And so I said, okay, now open up PowerPoint. She said, well, I've never opened it. I said, okay, well, let's open it now. How do you open PowerPoint? And you press the Windows button, you type PowerPoint. So she knew that. And she opened it up and she sits there and, she was just so insistent. And she looks at it and she immediately clicks insert smart art. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's interesting. And she looks at me and she says, I've used this program before. And I'm like, I think you have. And I said, but you know what? I want to make sure you know it because you need it for college. And she's sitting there and she's just tinkering and she's not really saying much to me. And she said, I think I know how to use this program. I think I don't need your help all week. I'm like, okay. I said, let me just watch you a little while longer, make sure you're okay, see if you have any questions. So I just sat there, another 20 minutes or so, and she was just really, really quiet. And I said, well, I've planned this whole week for you. So if you don't know PowerPoint, and I know you told this person and that person that you didn't know it, then I've got to be able to go back to them and say, I spent 5 days with you and I made sure that you knew it. And she got really, really quiet. And she said, I think I need to go back and I need to tell them that I know how to do this and I don't need your help. I said, oh, okay. Well, I'll give you a chance to do that today and I'll go follow up with them and then I'll come and see you tomorrow and we'll see if you need some more help. And in that case, the awesome thing about being at a small school is you can have that kind of follow up. I did have to pray over it and know what to do. And I did blame myself. But thank goodness for a teacher who knew that I try to teach my students. Can I tell you that 100% of my students learn 100% of my content? Well, until I have hundreds in every single class at every single day, I can't tell you that. But I do know that I work really hard to cover all the content. So I was so thankful that teacher told me. And I was able to, the principal told me, and I was able to make things where I knew and I felt comfortable that she knew something she needed to know. I think that this lesson is something for all of us to be really, really careful. I hear it all the time. I've heard it for the 17 years I've been teaching. Kids will go to their 8th grade lit teacher and their lit teacher will say, what's a noun? And half the class will look at them blankly with the little deer in the headlights blinks in their eyes and they look so cute and angelic and they'll say, I don't know what a noun is. Nobody ever taught me. Now, maybe sometimes it's true, but I'm telling you, if you know that teacher before you and they cover their content, it's probably, I'm not going to say they're intentionally lying. Let's just say that sometimes kids forget in all the terminology that we throw at them that they have learned something. That's the first thing is just to remember that teaching is a journey. You might feel like you fail. You haven't necessarily failed, but sometimes what you teach has more to do with the content. So I was focused on the PowerPoint content, but in some ways I was really more focused on what was happening inside this young lady that caused her to say this about a teacher that she honestly had a good relationship with, and I had a good relationship with her. What caused that to happen and what could I learn from it and what could she learn from it? And it had nothing to do with PowerPoint. It had to do with communication. It had to do with holding somebody accountable. I could have just gone on and said, oh, she's lying and moved on with my life. But I think that we both became better people because I followed up with that. Now, the next thing is that, sometimes the things that we teach don't have anything to do with the classroom. Now, two of the most difficult things that I've ever dealt with, well, really more than two, but I have two that come to mind, are when my precious students I love have a parent that passes away just way too young. And honestly, I hate death and I know God hates death and it's just a terrible thing. And it's never okay to me when it happens. One young man, when he was, I believe it was in 7th or 8th grade, he was pretty young. And it was rare that I was at school on a Saturday, but this time I was at school on a Saturday and his dad was mowing the grass. And I was running back and forth to my car for some reason. And he stopped mowing right at that moment. And he came up and saw me and he talked to me about his boys. And he said, he looked at me in the eye. It was very serious. And he said, I love my boys. They're good boys. I need you to make them do the right thing. And I said, oh, of course, I'll make them do the right thing. And he said, no. And he looked at me right in the eye and he said, I need you to make them do the right thing. I need you to promise me that you will make them do the right thing. Right now, I want you to promise me. And I never had anybody say that. And he was serious. And so I looked at him and I said, okay, I promise you that I will make your boys do the right thing. As long as I'm their teacher, as long as we're in each other's lives, I'll make them do the right thing. Okay? And he says, okay. Well, you can probably guess that daddy was not around too much longer and he passed away. So hard for his boys. Oh, I love those boys so much. They're so brilliant. Such brilliant young men. But the youngest really, really ended up having a harder time even later on. Now, there's a line in Hamilton when they're singing Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story. It's at the end of the musical. It's one of my favorite songs. And Eliza, who had loved Alexander Hamilton, says, I put myself back in the narrative. I stopped wasting time on tears. I live another 50 years. And this is the really hard thing when we lose somebody we love. We want to take ourselves out of the narrative. Now, when I've talked to kids, I had another young man who's right in my mind who I had sat near him and his father on a state ball game, and he was young, and his father just sat there with his arm around him and just loved his son. And maybe a month later, he was a police officer and somebody killed him because they had stolen $20. And I can't even say it. It's just so unconscionable, so ridiculous. And it just broke all our hearts. And I went to see him and because I loved him. And I think he liked me as a teacher too. And his mom said he did. So anyway, I went in to see him, and my grandmother took me to Alaska when I was in 8th grade, and it was 2 weeks, and she just poured so much into me. Well, my grandfather had died when he was young. He was around 55, and my grandmother was older when she took me, and she was not so old to me anymore, but she was probably upper 60s when she took me on this trip to Alaska when I was in 8th grade. And one of the things she told me is something I've often told others. She said, it was in the middle of the night. Grandmama was having gallbladder trouble, and of course, the sun didn't go down in July, August in Alaska. So Grandmama looked at me and she said, Vicki, she said, one day you're going to lose somebody that you love and you're going to think that you can't live. And what I'm telling you to do is that first year, I want you to put one foot in front of the other. And I want you just to try to live one day at a time. Don't think about things. Just, if you need to cry, just go be alone, have a good old cry, but just live one day at a time. And she says, and then one day you're going to wake up, maybe a year later, maybe 2 years later, and you're going to say, you know what? I can live. And when you get to that day, live your life, because that's what the person you love would want you to do. And I kind of feel like when I hear Eliza sing that in Hamilton, sorry, I'm so choked up. I just kidding me. That my grandmother probably would have sung, I put myself back in the narrative. I'll stop wasting time on tears. I'll live another 50 years, because she did live almost another 50 years and was just such an amazing woman. So when I go to those funeral homes and when I go to those things that happen, I'll tell my students or I'll tell my friends this advice. And I even followed it when Granny died, that put one foot in front of the other while you're just trying to get through the initial shock and grief. And then one day you're going to wake up and you're going to decide that you can live, and then live, and don't have any guilt about it because you've got things to do, and if you know anything about the Hamilton, the musical, Eliza goes on to raise money for the Washington Monument. She documents the stories of all the soldiers. She just does all these amazing things. And so did my grandmother, like taking me to Alaska and saying, Vicki, you may live in a small town, but never have a small mind. You are made to make a difference in this world. You are made to do these things. So when I visit my kids and my students, I feel like they're my kids in these moments. I'll tell them, I love you. I love your family. I am so sorry. I don't try to get you. You can't explain stuff. So don't even try. And I'll just try to encourage them, and I'll tell them my granny's story. And then there's hard things that happen after that. And I remember one of the young men ended up transferring schools, and he knew he needed to, and knew he needed the change. I knew it was the right thing to do, but he hadn't turned anything in for the last 3 weeks of school, and he didn't want to. He was doing it. He was getting all the way up to the point of hitting the submit button, and he wouldn't hit submit. And I called him in, and I called him on it. And I said, you know what? I know you're feeling bad about yourself. I know you're upset, but I care about you. I care about your family. I care about your father. And he always expected you to do your best. And this is not your best. So you're going to turn this stuff in. You're going to come in, you're going to sit by me, and I'm going to watch you, and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to make sure you turn it in. I'm not accepting your 71 that you have because you haven't turned anything in. And he said, I'm not going to do it. I said, well, I'm going to do what it takes until you do it. And he came, and I said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. So I talked to him the next day. I'm not going to do it. I talked to his mom. And then eventually he came in and we got him to do it. And he brought his grade up to, high B, which was much more like he needed to make because he was already in high school and this was going to go on his transcript. And I looked at him and I said, what have you learned? And he said, well, I learned you're stubborn. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, I learned that I just need to finish it, even if I don't feel like it. And I said, yes, that's right. You got to finish. You got to do your best, even when you don't feel like it. And yeah, I was teaching content. I sure was. I was teaching content, but I was teaching life more than I was teaching content. And go back to the other young man that I promised his daddy. We go to his senior year and they're getting ready to do the walk. And, one thing I see for many students is they have trouble letting go because they struggle with the uncertain future. And so this young man was definitely struggling with the uncertain future of what was going to hold after high school. And it was really hard for him, about his dad. And I just prayed for him and loved him. Big, huge fella, big old fella. Well, he decided he was going to do the walk through the school, and we were going to film it. It's going to go in graduation and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I'm not doing it. I brought my stuff, but I'm not doing it. And, other teachers came to me and the principal, oh, we can't make him do it. He won't do it. He's too big. He won't do it. And I'll never forget, he was in the library. He was just on the internet surfing and the others were getting ready to do it. And I looked at him and I said, y'all stop. Do not do it. Stop. Wait right here. And they were like, well, nobody can make him do it. I said, listen, no, I made a promise. I'm keeping it. You wait right here. I just knew in my heart that he needed to do it. Now, some of you are going to disagree with me because you're going to be like, let the kid do what the kid wants to do. Okay. Sometimes kids don't know. And they don't know, and they can't see long term, and they can't live regrets. And for me, in my senior slideshow, I had 3 pictures out of, 500 or 600 because some people went and took some pictures of me out. And it really, really hurt my feelings. And for the rest of my life, I have to kind of have that hurt. And it does hurt. If you look back and you see your senior movie or you see your senior slideshow and there's no pictures of you, it just does hurt. I'm sorry. I don't care who you are. It hurts. So I went in there and I said, okay, I hear you're not going to walk. He says, nope. I said, let me tell you something. And I told him the story about the promise I made to his dad. I said, I made a promise and he's not here right now, but I am telling you, I know he would tell you that he wanted you to walk because he sacrificed, your mom sacrificed, they sacrificed so much to put you through this school. And they would want you to do that because they would want you to be in the video that's going to be in graduation and they would want you to be there. He says, I'm not going to do it and you can't make me. I said, no, I can't make you, but let me tell you something. Over my dead body, are you not going to walk today? I said, here's what's going to happen. First, I'm going to call your mom and then we'll talk to her. And then I'm going to call your grandma and then we're going to talk to her. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to call your preacher. I don't care who I have to call, but we're going to have you walk today because it's the right thing for you to do. And you may not thank me now. You're going to be mad at me today. I know you're going to be mad at me, but I am telling you, I love you. And I made a promise to your daddy and I love your dad. And I am going to do this because I know when you're 23 and you're 24, 25, and when you come back to that graduation, you won't remember that you had a hard day and you didn't really want to let go. What you're going to remember is that you weren't in the movie. And I'm doing this for your future self. And I'm going to do this because one day you're going to thank me, even if you just hate my guts today. I love you too much. I said, so here's the question. Do you want to do the easy way or the hard way? The easy way is, that I'm telling you I'm not going to give up. And the hard way is you make me do all this stuff I don't want to do because you're a grown man and you're about to graduate. Can you just do the right thing? Because I'm telling you, I know your dad and I know he would want you to do this. And he just he sat there and he just looked at me and he said, Miss Davis, I guess I have to. I know I need to, but I don't want to. And I think it meant that he was just letting go of a place he had been. And his daddy had been there so much and he walked. And he ended up having a pretty happy face. I mean, it wasn't like he was an Eeyore or anything on film. And, some people would say you're butting in. And I'll tell you, butting in sometimes has gotten me in trouble. Very early in my 17-year career, I had a young man who was just not doing right, and he was not doing right. And I couldn't get his mama to call me back. I couldn't get his daddy to call me back. Man, I was having such trouble with him. So I go to a football game, and it's before the football game, and he's a senior, and he's been misbehaving, right? So I called his mom, and I just said, I would love to talk to you. I'm having trouble with your child, and would you give me some time to talk to you at some point? Oh, yes, I'll do that. Well, she proceeds to go to the athletic director and completely tell on me and what a horrible person, and I had ruined the ball game and blah, 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 all this stuff, right? And some of it was embellished, and, it was a whole lot of words for what was like a 30-second conversation on my end, but okay, that happens. And I proceeded to totally get, as we say in the South, told off for bothering somebody and ruining their ball game and that I should not do that. And I was a terrible person and all that. Man, I was so wounded. I was so hurt. I felt like I'd been trying to do the right thing. And so I made a couple decisions at that point. First of all, I made the decision that I wanted to have an amazing relationship with parents from day one. And, send positive things home, write comments on report cards so that when I did call, that they would call me back. So some parents who have children who stay in trouble, they just get sick of it and they just want them to graduate and they don't want to talk anymore about it. They just want to be done. Now, I'm not going to judge those parents, but they're there. And so if my first communication has been positive with those parents, they're more likely to call me back. So that was the first big thing. The second thing is I licked my wounds for a long time, and I had some resentment, and I was angry, and I had to deal with that. But I prayed over it, and I realized that I believe I had done the right thing. And I'm not always here to please people. And yes, I'm going to tick people off sometimes if I'm in people's business that they think I shouldn't be. Not everybody wants the same for their child, and not everybody holds their kids accountable. And I'm not perfect either. I can certainly make a mistake and deserve, I guess, to be fussed at. But I try not to yell and fuss at my students, so hopefully parents won't yell and fuss at me. But anyway, I think that it's important to realize this. So I've shared some stories with you, some good and some bad, some fails, some things, but I hope you have it. You know, I teach whoever walks in that door. I'm not just the teacher of the students who teach themselves. I'm the teacher of the student who might not want to be there, who might not like my subject. I mean, sometimes they'll just tell me, hey, I don't like computer. And I'll say, I'm so glad you tell me that, because first, you and I have an honest relationship and you tell me the truth. Secondly, life is not about loving everything you do, because you're going to have some stuff at your job that you hate doing and some stuff that you love, just like I do. I'm not crazy about grading, but I have to do it every day. So if you can learn to overcome in my class, then I'm setting you up for a good life, because you can learn how to do the hard things you don't want to do. I sure do teach a lot of content, and I know you teach a lot of content, but I love it. I love teaching. I love the students. It is hard. It will break your heart. Do you want to be the teacher who is called to go to the funeral home or go to the home? And I'm going to have to tell you that I do. I want to be the teacher that is called when somebody's hurting, because that means that I'm there and they love me and I love them. And it's part of loving people, is that you're there in the good and the bad. And I'll also tell you this, that some years ago when we were looking at the first state championship for the girls basketball team at my previous school, and I love those girls. Man, I love those girls so much. And after they won region with like a last second shot, and I ran down on the floor, and I was one of the first people those kids hugged. I got to be part of it because I was part of their lives. I was part of their pain, but I was also part of their joy. And when they went to state that morning, I was staying at the hotel with them. My daughter was a cheerleader, and the coach asked me to pray for them. And it was right there in the middle of it. And they were doing silly Snapchats, and I was making funny faces. And it was like, if you cry with people, you get to laugh with people. And I don't like crying with people. I really don't. I don't even like crying on this podcast. My goodness, what's wrong with me today? I know it's that my dear friend that I love has lost her husband too young, and he was young. But I love her, and I know that she's lived a good life, and he lived a good life, and she's living with no regrets, and I'm working to live with no regrets, because I'm going to tell you something. This life is just too short, and there's so many more things we teach besides the content. The content's very important. My kids know I expect them to be world-class and God-honoring. We are going to cover more stuff than they can imagine, and it will wear them out, and it will wear me out. But I think sometimes the most important things I teach are actually how to live life. And part of that's the words I say. And most of that is what I do. And teacher, happy Valentine's Day. We're way over 10 minutes today. My husband Kip is probably going to fuss at me because he has to edit a big old long show today. But I felt like you needed to hear it. And for those of you who will take it, just know that the way I feel about my students, I feel about all you teachers out there who totally get what I'm saying. Because honestly, I bet you have it too. Start off the new year strong by planning your professional development with advancement courses. They offer over 200 online graduate-level PD courses in 19 different subject areas for K-12 teachers just like us. And because they're online and self-paced, you can take them anywhere and anytime with up to 6 months to complete. The courses are available for graduate credit through CAEP and regionally accredited university partners, or for continuing education units that meet your state requirements. They're a terrific way to get your PD done, and the courses really focus on creating practical products that you can use in your classroom the next day. Right now, my listeners and blog readers can save 20% off each course with the code COOL20. That's just $120 per graduate credit hour, or $160 for 50 clock hours. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat and learn more, and use the coupon code COOL20. Never stop learning.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.